As we've seen in some of our earlier videos, we shouldn't be surprised that children find it difficult to tell us about abuse. If we consider the barriers behind this, there are many reasons. Children might not have the capacity, language skills, or vocabulary to communicate verbally. They might not know how to translate their experiences into words. Children might not actually recognise that what's happening to them is abuse. The person who is hurting them may well be telling them that what they are doing is normal. They may not have received any education regarding healthy relationships, sexual development, or sexual behaviour. They may have been abused from a very young age and not have an alternative frame of reference. Feelings of shame and embarrassment are common for most victims and survivors of sexual abuse. Children may believe that to talk about their abuse would bring shame on their families and their wider community. This can be exacerbated when community expectations forbid sex and sexual activity before marriage. People who harm children may use threats as a way of stopping the child telling anyone. These may be direct threats of the things that will happen to them if they do tell. Furthermore, children will very often blame themselves or feel that the abuse was somehow their fault. This might, in part, be due to the messages they are given as part of the grooming process, such as, if you didn't want it, you would have told someone. Victims and survivors tell us that these messages left them feeling like they had colluded with their abuser or let them do it. But in reality, we know that no child has the choice. Some children will experience sexual arousal during sexual abuse. This is because there is a physiological response to sexual touch, whether or not the touch is wanted or unwanted. This is probably one of the most difficult things for victims and survivors to talk about, and can lead to issues of guilt, shame, self-hatred, and self-punishing feelings. We also need to recognise that there are additional barriers in our society which can make it even more difficult for children to disclose abuse and for adults to recognise it. These barriers can stem from inequality and discrimination on the grounds of gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, and religion. These factors often do not sit in isolation, but instead intersect with one another. Our Communicating with Children resource provides more detail on this, but I think it will be useful if I just give you one example to illustrate. Let's take Reese. Reese is a black 13-year-old boy from a Christian family. Reese was 13 when his male swimming coach first began to abuse him. Now, we know there are particular issues for boys in disclosing sexual abuse. Society's views of masculinity can lead boys to believe they are not allowed to be victims, that they will be perceived as weak, and feeling that they should have been able to fight off their abuser, particularly if their abuser is female. Reese did not want to tell anyone about his abuse because of these factors, and because he worried that people would think he was gay. This was of particular concern to him in light of his family's religious views about sexuality. A year later, he told his big brother a bit about what had been happening to him, who told their parents. Reese's parents immediately withdrew him from the swimming club to stop the abuse happening. But they worried about telling the police because of their negative experience of previous interactions with them. Being part of a close-knit Christian community, they also worried about the stigma that may come if they spoke about the abuse publicly. Reese's family told him and his brother to never speak about the abuse again. From this example, we can see that Reese and his family experienced a number of different internal and external barriers to disclosing his abuse. As I mentioned earlier, it's worth looking at our resources and the CSA Centre website for more background on these specific additional barriers to disclosure. In our next video, we will talk about building up your confidence in responding to concerns.